Welcome back to the next stage of the RS660 McCrum's motorcycle obsession engineering race bike build project thing. It is currently Thursday lunchtime. Me and Eric have actually had some lunch, and now we're going to crack on and see if we can get lots and lots of the bike done this afternoon. I was about to start ripping all the ABS lines off, but because Eric's turned up with the fairing, I thought it would be a reasonable opportunity to at least put the top fairing up there and see where it fits and sort of what's going to be in the way. The only thing at the moment I was hoping to get away with leaving like the original radiator shrouds with the water bottle and the reg rec on it, but we can't, so I've got to take those off. But the nice thing is the race fairing sits a little bit wider around the radiator, so I can route my brake lines a little bit easier now. So what I'm actually going to do next is put the bike in the van with the fairing not on it, and we're going to have a little trip to B&C Express where we're going to have some brake lines made. Eric's a good lad. He's driven 700 miles today. He's turned up, and the first thing he's doing is ripping motorcycles apart. He's a good lad. If he's really, really good, I might even let him pump the bench up. We've been to B&C Express with the bike, and the chaps down there have made us our custom brake lines, so they are an exact fit where I want to route them on the bike. So what I now need to do, as I actually started about 2 hours ago, is finish ripping the brake lines off the bike so I can fit these little babies. Now, I've already drained the fluid out the reservoir. What I'm going to do now is undo the banjo up here, undo the banjos on the calipers, and basically try and feed all the brake lines out of the bike without having to take the radiator off, if I can avoid it. Those down there are the original ABS brake lines that go from the front of the bike, through the bike to the ABS module. And to remove them is a bit of a faff. I did actually think for a minute that I was going to have to take the radiator off because the brake lines run over the top through a little clip, and they've put a screw for the clip for the ABS lines behind the radiator. But with the help of Eric, we've managed to just push the radiator down just far enough that I could get a screwdriver in and get to them. That was a little bit awkward. It was a little bit like being in a strip club. I could see what I wanted to get to, but I wasn't allowed to get to it. But luckily, with the help of a friend, we, forced it to fit. Anyway, right, moving on from that before it gets really dark. I've had a little bit of a clean-up, so we've not got too much brake fluid floating around. We've got those lines off. I'm going to strip the rear line off at the same time. Then I'm going to make some plugs for the ABS pump, and then fit the new lines. While Eric's been busying himself fitting engine covers, I've been making little spacers. Now, I'd run out of round tube or round bar of sensible size, so I have made them out of a bit of hex. But these are to fit on the banjos on the ABS pump so that anything that's in the pump stays in the pump and nothing that should be outside the pump falls in it. So I'm just going to fit them just to seal everything off, and then I'm actually going to fit my new brake lines. So I've finally got my front brake line fitted, so I'm going from the mass cylinder down here, splitting above the bottom yoke, or above the bottom of the bottom yoke, so that if anything were to sort of fly up here when you were racing, any stones, debris, whatever, mudguard, it won't affect your brake line. I've put a P-clip under there to hold it out the way. The clips down here, I've got like a little piece of fuel pipe cable tied to it, so it actually holds it away from the fork leg. So they're now fitted. I like to run my lines down the outside of the fork leg so that when the wheel moves up and down, it's never going to trap it. Slightly annoyingly, the traction control wire goes up the inside of the fork leg, but I will move that later. Right, now that that's all connected, what I need to do is bleed it up. And oh, what fun that can be. For those not familiar with bleeding brakes up, I'm going to fill the fluid reservoir with brake fluid. I'm going to be using Motul RS660, which is really, really high boiling point sort of race spec fluid. And then as I push the brake lever, the mass cylinder, which is just a pump, pumps the fluid down the line and pushes any air bit by bit out of the bleed nipple on the caliper, thus filling everything up with fluid. It does take a while, and I really ought to invest in a sort of vacuum one that sucks the fluid through because it's faster, but for now we will be doing it the old-fashioned way. Look at that, I've got a lovely stiffy there. Beautiful. They actually bled up fairly easily, bled a little bit out of the mass cylinder there, in case any air got into there, and because the calipers were actually still full of fluid, we only had to push the stuff out of the brake lines. So that was fairly easy. Now I can move on to the back. Right then, that's the rear brake line fitted and bled up with some more Motul RS660. You've got to have enough slack on your brake line that it doesn't hit anything, but as the swinging arm moves up and down, it has to have enough movement so it doesn't pull tight. You've also got to have enough slack in it so that if you push the wheel all the way back to the end of the swinging arm, you're not pulling the brake line tight. At some point we'll even clean the wheel. That seems like an insignificant job at the moment. Right, Eric has drilled the filler cap and this so we can lock wire that. I need a Jubilee clip so I can lock wire the oil filter on the other side. In fact, if we go round the other side, Eric has fabricated a bracket to fit the reg rec because normally this sits inside the cowl here, but we can't run these cowls because they hit the fairing. So that's been mounted there. The water pipe's off because we're flushing the water system through with water. We just haven't got quite round to doing that yet. And yeah, and then the line that I connected up earlier that I'd fitted where the horn was for the side stand switch, we're going to tuck that under there because it's out of the way. Right, I think it might be time for a quick tea break. Right, it turns out men can multitask because Eric is flushing the coolant system because we have to get all the antifreeze coolant out of it because it's slippery, so we're not allowed to race with it, and we need to have only water in there. So Eric's doing that and he's drinking coffee at the same time. I believe the coffee may be vital to any more progress because it's turning into quite a long day. It is just before 7 o'clock in the evening. I think we'll probably do another, probably 10 hours or so, and then we might be allowed to go home for a little bit. 5 minutes sleep, back to it. What do you think, Eric?
Sounds like a plan, yeah.
Excellent.
Do what we can.
Right, I'm going home, Eric's on overtime. So the bike looks like it's beginning to come together. We've got the fuel tank back on, and at least I just started it just to make sure it did actually start, make sure the fuel pump and bits were running. We have got a couple of warnings on the dash, but one of those is to do with the headlight being disconnected. Now, that is the connector, and we have actually picked up a emulator to go in there to trick it into thinking the headlights are on, but we need to fit the fairing first and see where we can put this, because it'll end up here somewhere. So we need to fit the fairing to test that. We also need to fit the fairing to see if we need to mod anything in the belly pan, see where we need to drill everything, basically actually see if it fits properly. So the next job is we're going to trial fit the fairing. I will admit the day is beginning to get quite long, so I have written out a small list of jobs that have to be done on it. And luckily, it is a relatively small list. I will admit I didn't record every single little detail of the build, mainly because we were really busy and we were a bit short on time. I don't actually believe how easily this fairing's gone on. Over the years, I've fitted lots and lots of fairing to lots and lots of bikes. The best kit I'd previously fitted was probably the Carboning kit on a BMW, which fits really, really nicely, but you have to fit the fitting kit that fits the fairing first. This has gone straight onto the standard mounting points, sort of down here and into the belly pan and bit, and we've not had to chop anything, we've not had to trim anything, it literally just a bit of wiggling, straight on. Holes are already drilled, straight in. I was expecting to spend 3 or 4 hours actually messing around to make the fairing fit, and it's just dropped straight on. Right, so we're going to give it a plug. We've paid full money for this. This has come from TJ Performance, but I am almost speechless, apart from the fact I carry on talking, about how well this fitted. I honestly don't believe it. So instead of going home to celebrate, we're going to do more work. Even though fitting the fairing is so far a raging success, there are still a few little bits to do. Obviously we have to fit a screen, and we have to put the water bottle that was originally sort of in the inner cowl in here, we're going to have to put that somewhere. We're not going to be able to use the standard one, so we're going to use just a random bottle. It doesn't have to hold pressure or anything, you can use pretty much anything. Over the years people have used everything from Coke cans to brake fluid bottles and all sorts. It doesn't really matter. We just have to find a way to tuck it inside the fairing. What else do we have to do, Eric? Fit the screen. Do that. I've got a list. I should probably refer to the list. So I've gone to fit the rain light under here, an ACU regulation to have a rain light for when it's raining, and I've gone under the seat to sort of play with the wiring and all that sort of stuff. And I popped the cover off that holds the battery in place and noticed it's got a lithium battery in it. I mean, they're getting dedication to lightweight and they're taking it seriously. I know lithium batteries are sort of fairly common in high-end Superleggera Ducatis and that sort of thing, but it's the first time I've seen one on a slightly more budget motorcycle. Well done, Aprilia. Good step forward. So to wire my rain light in, what I've done is I've fitted the wires for the rain light itself onto some little flat spade connectors, and they're pushed into the actual connector for the tail light, so that when I turn the ignition on, if we look up there, where am I looking? If I look in the right place, that's it, we now have a rain light. TT, we have to run the rain light on all the time, so I tend to actually wire mine so they're on all the time. Nobody seems to complain. What I'm just going to do is put a bit of tape over everything to keep it nice and tidy. The advantage of doing it like this is that we've not had to chop any connectors or anything. In theory, one day this could become a road bike again. I think it'd be a shame, but you know, it has that option. We've finally decided it's time to go home. I sort of sometimes get my second wind of an evening, but everything looked like it was flagging, and then I decided I was spending half my life just staring at a motorbike and not doing anything. So that means it's time to go home. It is quite late. It's not the midnight that I thought it would be, but it's not far off. But we've made excellent progress today. We have a bike that will be, within a few hours' work, an actual running race bike that we can go and race and everything. So, that'll do for today. We'll be back in the morning. Might look a little bit tired, but I'm sure it'll be alright. Join us again next time for the final day of race preparation.